Hello everyone. Today I want to show a game played in the 1991 Linares tournament between Vasyl Ivanchuk and Garry Kasparov. Vasyl Ivanchuk had the white pieces. Let's check it out. Starts with e4, c5, knight f3 and d6 and bishop b5. It is the Sicilian and knight d7, d4, knight gf6 and white castles. cd4, into d4 and a6, pushing the bishop back, bishop into d7 and bishop g5, 8-6, bishop into f6 and g into f6. So we are capturing towards the center, and we'll notice that this clump of pawns, 4 pawns in the center, will provide quite a bit of security to the black king. At the same time, the g file is open for the rook to attack the white king, and it's likely in such positions that black does not castle, and that's okay because of the central pawn mass that provides a lot of security to the black king. c4, mimicking a Maroczy bind setup, and e6, just creating some room to play bishop e7, knight c3 developing, and rook c8. King h1, a prophylactic move. Should the rook ever need to come to g1 to defend g2, or later the knight on f3 could move and then you want to push f4, h5, gaining some space, a4 and h4, so threatening to push h3 and busting open the king side, and h3 by white, preventing. Bishop e7 and b4. So white has a queenside majority and is trying to advance that. a5, trying to undermine the setup, and b5. Queen c7, going after the c4 pawn, and knight d2 to defend. c5, offering a trade of queens, but Ivanchuk declines and goes to queen d3. Rook g8 now. Finally, the rook occupies the semi-open g file, and there could be some chances of the queen coming over and threatening checkmate. Rook a to e1, centralizing the last inactive piece, and queen g5, as said before. Rook g1, defending the checkmate threat. Queen f4, putting pressure on the f2 pawn, and rook ef1. So the idea is now probably knight can come to e2 to kick away the queen, and then f4 can be pushed. b6, just stopping that pawn advance, and well, have to make some move. Knight e2 anyway, and queen goes to h6. Here, well, the knights to some extent are a bit passive, and Ivanchuk came up with a brilliant idea to sacrifice a pawn and create some counterplay on the queen side. He went for c5. What it does is it principally vacates the c4 square for the white knight on d2, and from there it will look at d6 and b6, maybe even create a passed pawn that could provide some counterplay. Now f4 was also an alternative. Maybe then the pawn could threaten f5 and open something towards the black king. That was also possible. Now you can capture with the b pawn, with the d pawn, with the rook. The best alternative is d into c5 actually. In all three lines, the next move is knight c4, whether it's captured with the b pawn, the d pawn, or the rook. Knight c4 is coming. That was the whole point. Rook b8 to defend, and rook d1, threatening the bishop. Bishop retreats to c8, and then f4. f4 is possible here. The king could perhaps tuck away to f8. That's possible. But after bishop c8, it's also possible to go for knight d6 check, and the king can hide on f8. Suppose, let's look at a sample variation of knight into c8 and rook into c8 and queen d7. This way queen infiltrates and will try to grab a pawn and create a passed pawn. So rook t8 and queen c7 now, going after the b6 pawn. After a trade of rooks, let's say queen g5, will threaten checkmate on g2, but after, let's say, queen b8, king to g7, and queen b6, because we threw in the check before and grabbed a pawn just so to break the coordination between the queen and the rook, and king h7. So there are chances on both sides, but white has a passed pawn, a protected passed pawn, whereas the c pawn, which is technically a passed pawn for black, is a bit vulnerable. So rook g1 would be forced probably. But this would have allowed for some chances, for some better chances. But after c5, Kasparov captured with the rook. And now after knight c4, there's no good way to defend the b6 pawn. That is gone. So rook, king to f8, king just going to a little safer square, knight into b6. Bishop e8, bishop was under attack, and f4. f5, breaking some central control by white and also preventing f5 from white. E takes f5 and rook takes f5. And rook c1, claiming the open file, threatening to infiltrate. King to g7. Now the king comes in front of the white rook, and this gives a chance to white, and Ivanchuk takes it. He goes for g4. Now at first glance it may seem that you can blunt this by capturing en passant, but if h into g3, then after queen into g3, that's a very strong battery. If the king moves sideways, the rook on g8 will be up for grabs, and let's say, king f6 is forced, rather, because now if queen into g8, then queen into h3 would be checkmate. So, but queen c3 is available, and this picks up material in some form or the other. This is quite good for white. So after g4, which now there won't be any more threats of a queen and a rook battery on g2 threatening checkmate. So rook c5, getting out of the way. Ivanchuk trades, and we have d into c5, and now knight c8, attacking the bishop. Bishop f8. So we can see both the bishops are quite passive, whereas one knight for white is deep into black's camp. Queen d8 now, attacking the other bishop. Queen g6, threatening queen e4 check, which will pick up the e2 knight, and could also allow for some perpetuals, possibly. But f5, and just pushing the queen away. So of course, if e into f5, then simply you can grab, white can grab the bishop. So queen h6, getting out of the way, and not even bothering with the bishop. First g5, attacking the queen again. Queen h5, attacking the knight on e2, but rook g4, stopping that. E takes f5 and knight e4. The queen doesn't have too many squares, so queen h8 is forced, and now it's a very easy win. Simply queen f6 check. The king has very few squares. It's quite smothered in by its own pieces. You don't even need to grab the bishop. This is the faster win, and king 7 is forced, and now rook into h4 check. It's going to be a forced checkmate, and Kasparov resigned here. Well, I think the key moment in this game was when, after queen h6 at the 23rd move, Ivanchuk tried for c5 and created that idea. Sometimes it's that decision that, let me sacrifice a pawn for some activity, an activity above all. You create that the pawn is occupying a square which you need for a piece, and then you sacrifice that pawn, and then you can grab, your piece can occupy the excellent square. In this case, it was the c4 square for the knight. That's what makes this game special, and things just flow from there. Well, thank you all for watching. I'll see you soon for the next game.